Chapter 7. America Beckons. These people of the United States are the rightful masters of both Congress and courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. Abraham Lincoln. During the most crucial hours of the American crisis in the war with the British, Thomas Paine was penning that the cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. This is more assuredly true today than any previous time since 1776. If America should become bathed in the blood of a revolution and anarchy, it will sink the hopes of millions of slaves under communist rule. For all the world, the downfall of the American Republic would be the final curtain in the drama of human liberty. Dictatorships and totalitarian statism have tarnished the earth with more slave labor camps, torture chambers, and wholesale slaughtering than all of the primeval savages combined. Such oppressions are always in the name of humanitarianism or socialism. Such archaic systems of government need war to survive. For their existence, it is necessary for them to loot and plunder and rape other nations of their prosperity. Socialism, Bolshevism, statism, or communism is nothing more than gang rule. Capitalism is free enterprise, a fertile foundation for the rights of individualism. Men who are free are the only people who have the incentive to produce, to progress, and to accomplish a thriving business with an abundance. Meanwhile, back at the Soviet ranch, in 1917, there were only a few thousand crackpots, dedicated to the idea that they were going to disrupt and supplant every other government in the world. In 50 years and over the bodies of millions of people, they have ruthlessly hoisted their red banner over 1/3 of the Earth's surface, and enslaved nearly 1/2 of the total world population. We are faced with the truth that for every American, there are over 6 people who are being trained and indoctrinated with one objective in mind: to destroy and rule over the United States. The communist is as trained and dedicated as any kamikaze pilot. Billy Graham said that in France a French communist spoke up in a university there, and said that if the communists told me to kill my mother, I would kill her without batting an eyelash. Whatever the party demands of its subjects, that is what is done, and they are all dedicated to the annihilation of every freedom-loving American. The enemy has us outnumbered. They are often better informed and act with deeper dedication to their cause than we do to ours. They are mass-producing weapons, tactics, and armies, while we are spending and giving away billions of dollars, begging peace, and fighting no-win wars. To the Communist Party there will be no peace on earth until they have overcome all opposition. The Reds will proceed with any means and at any cost to obtain this objective. This enemy is vicious, his methods of operation are horrible, and he is not beneath murder individually or by the millions. Ilya Ehrenberg, the Soviet writer, said that Stalin had done nothing else throughout his life but write the names of his innocent victims. His life would not have been long enough to finish the job. Khrushchev was a worse terror, but it was Mao Zedong who has gained the greatest distinction of all, by murdering more than any other ruler. If the Red Mongolian barbarians of Russia and the heathen communist Chinese should prevail in America, they have boasted that they will kill 70% of all the adult population. Several years ago there fell into the hands of our government some secret documents which contained a communist timetable for world revolution. One of the items said, "No war with the United States until after 1970. The United States must be isolated by all possible means. The defensive and offensive preparations of the Soviet Union and China must therefore be completed before 1970. Plans for economic collapse of capitalistic countries. As a final goal, there should be in East and South Asia, after these are conquered, 25 million well-trained men who can be immediately mobilized. These men are to be held in readiness for emergency. They will force the capitalistic countries to keep on increasing defense expenses until economic collapse overtakes them. The communist rulers are building armies for a final war. They are at present undermining and corroding the structures of freedom and economics within our own country. They also tediously labor to undermine every other aspect of liberty and morality in America. Last October 13, Moscow's Pravda announced that fighting against the anti-communist organizations was one of the most important tasks presently facing the international communist movement. Nearly 2 weeks later, this same announcement was repeated in the Communist Daily World here in this country. This is accomplished by their operating in or controlling over legitimate and lawful organizations. There are hundreds of communist front organizations and many more that they are attempting to overtake. Former FBI agent Dan Smoot reported that interlocking directorates. The NAACP was in 1909. Its first 5 top officials were well-known socialists, one of whom, W.E.B. Du Bois, later became a militant communist. In 1936, communists began infiltrating the NAACP. By 1956, at least 77 top NAACP officials were known to federal agencies as participants in communist or pro-communist activities. The Southern Conference Educational Fund, a powerful civil rights organization, has helped finance and establish several other groups. The Joint Legislative Committee on Un-American Activities of the State of Louisiana revealed, in a report published April 13, 1964, that the CEF is controlled and managed by communists. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which has incited much racial violence, particularly among college students, is substantially under the influence of the Communist Party, according to the Louisiana Joint Legislative Committee. The committee reported that Martin Luther King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference is also substantially under the control of the Communist Party. King, foremost personality in the civil rights movement, is notorious for his association with communists, communist fronters, communist organizations, and moral degenerates connected with communist causes. The Congress of Racial Equality (CORE) has, perhaps, directly instigated more racial violence and civil disobedience than any other civil rights group. On May 25, 1961, U.S. Senator James O. Eastland, Mississippi Democrat, chairman of the Internal Security Subcommittee, reported, "From investigation and examination of the facts and records, there can be little doubt, in my judgment, but that this group CORE is an arm of the communist conspiracy. They are agents of worldwide communism." The National Council of Churches has become a militant racial agitation group. At least 658 officials of the NCC have Communist Front records, according to a 310-page book listing names and records published by Circuit Writers Incorporated. 110 Government Place, Cincinnati 2, Ohio, $4. The American Civil Liberties Union, very influential in the civil rights movement, was founded by communists and socialists. At least 9 prominent officials of a clue have been linked with communist fronts or with communist activities. At least 4 officials of the National Urban League, oldest civil rights group, have Communist Front records. The American Jewish Congress is militantly active in the civil rights movement. Rabbi Stephen Wise, head of the AJC for years, was associated with about 40 communist fronts. Communist subversive lists continue to increase, and there are at the present time over 1,000 subversive organizations in the United States. The communists boast that they have hardcore members in nearly every business, labor union, fraternal organization, religion, and governmental agency in America. The United States is becoming tainted with traitors, socialist dupes, and fellow travelers of the communist ideology. All of them believe earnestly that they are working for a grand triumph of humanitarianism, so that when the red flag is flown over America, they will have the finest positions and reap the choicest fruits of this country. There is one pertinent fact which is seldom discovered by people who become traitors for the Soviet cause, that among the very first people to be destroyed after a revolution are those who betrayed their own country. The leaders of communism know that a man who is a traitor to his own country would betray another. Once a person proves to be a traitor, he can move easily into that position again. The Red Army will be the force to bulldoze the bodies of traitors into the trenches, with the very people they labored so diligently to betray. The greatest fear of a communist is exposure. He works by deceit, subterfuge, and lies to obtain his objectives, but when he is exposed, his plans are frustrated. The communist operates by blackmail, bribery, and smear tactics, and only when these fail will he resort to violence. If he is exposed, his efforts are shown to be a fraud, and his avenues are easily blocked. An awakened America would be death to a communist revolution. The tenuous teeth of the enemy have been gnawing into the vitals of America. We are stumbling in judgments, we vaguely discern our dangers, and we falter at the approaching perils. We are losing the spirit of victory, we blunder in political and international affairs. Today there is in America public apathy that tolerates traitors, mocks at patriotism and religion, and allows riotous destruction and assassination. We are being brainwashed by delusive enemies from within and barbarians from without. The time has come for Americans to take a good look in the national mirror and shape up to our responsibilities. Every civil servant from the president to the post-hole digger is required to swear allegiance to the following oath. If men in government, as well as every citizen, would obey the requirements of this oath, there would be no subversives in this country. I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. A very sick American. My great-grandmother kept a journal of the trip across the Great Plains with a wagon and oxen, when she and great-grandpa were youngsters coming out to settle in California in the Great Migration. On the trail she wrote of sickness and hunger and heat and cold and dust and thirst, and the deaths and births like beads strung together on a thread of hope, hope of freedom, and a land of plenty for their children yet unborn. The ink was badly faded, but the message was clear. As I read, I began to think about America and being an American, and what it all stands for, and I thought about our enemies and what they intend to do to this America, to these rich lands and farms, to the cities and the people, to its freedom and its hope. And suddenly I realized that I am a sick American. I mean really sick. I am sick of panaceas and of backing up. I am sick of bureaucrats who tell me that my enemy is not really my enemy, and that I should live together with murderers and tyrants. I am sick of government that hasn't the guts to clean traitors out of its own offices. And I am sick of being a nice patient guy about it. I am sick of placidly accepting excuses instead of successes, of being a silent gentleman about it for fear of controversy. I am sick of my own country being ridiculed all over the world. I am sick of pink-fingered diplomats and lily-livered politicians who place personal careers above the fate of the flag. I am sick of 40 years of relentless, creeping, cancerous communistic godlessness that never once has wavered from its avowed purpose of conquering our flag and seeing it trampled in the mud under Russian boots. I am sick of my gentle desire to stand pat while the enemy advances. I am sick of educators who teach tolerance of subversion, and of clergymen who would have me quail at the specter of battle and turn my other cheek in fear of what our enemies might do. In all honesty, the thing of which I am sickest is the man who let these things come to be myself. And by the living God who made me, sir, I am a sick American who intends to get well. The true principles of respect and honor within individuals or nations must be nurtured continually or decay sets in. Today these principles are withering away. Something is making America sick. We are hatching a nation of beatniks and yippies brandishing switchblades and bike chains. Our movies are not better than ever, they are dirtier than ever, and Hollywood is engrossed in a multi-billion-dollar business, perpetrating their horizontal art. The bestsellers in literature are little better than the Playboy magazines. Schooling has evolved into a progressive education which starts teaching sex to kids in kindergarten, but prohibits them from the Bible. Our youth are drifting into a nation of pleasure-seeking welfare bums, from which many are becoming lesbians, rapists, dope addicts and psychopaths. Gambling dens and brothel houses are mushrooming everywhere, and the liquor trade has become a major industry. We are drowning our youngsters in violence, cynicism, and sadism piped into the living room and even the nursery. The grandchildren of the kids who used to weep because the little match girl froze to death now feel cheated if she isn't slugged, raped, and thrown into a Bessemer converter. Jenkin Lloyd Jones, editor, Tulsa Tribune. What has happened to the cultural theater where talent and artistry were the feature attractions instead of nudism? Where is romanticism in literature, those stories which made heroes and raised the moral aspirations of the reader? Why must every story or plot be drowned with sex, insanity, or murder? All of this perversion has been pawned off on a gullible public in the name of realism. Maybe our neighbors are not that real yet, but if this trash is heaped upon us much longer, they will become converted to those ideals. School kids are not tossed out of school for smoking anymore. Teachers are joining with them in marijuana sessions. The beauties of life are not explained in nature, but experienced on a trip with LSD. For an evening out, it's dinner at a topless nightclub, raw and lusty jokes from an entertainer, and then on to a party where house keys are swapped. The crime rate increases, and so do social welfare checks. The criminal is protected by the technicalities of the law, while the policeman is bashed on the head with a brick, spit on, and hauled up before a review board for police brutality. Shades of the Roman Empire. We are a nation of pawns in a game with international conspirators and criminals. Through our own faults and follies, we are being exploited by alien influences and evils. Wherever crimes, sins, or corruptions can be added to our citizens, there will also be found subversives to promote them. There must be a moral and spiritual revival in America to challenge the opposition. We are not the helpless victims of our environment, doomed to destruction. The fault lies not in our environment but in ourselves. The political, judicial, educational, and cultural organizations of a free society, can function only when the individual citizens have enlightened minds and are dedicated to the foundations of freedom. The basic responsibility rests on each one. Material forces alone do not determine the destinies of men. The resources of an infinite God can change the balance of material assets. These resources are liberated through the prayer, the sacrifice, and the intelligent organization of people filled with the love of God. Fundamentally, the problem is a moral and spiritual one. The foundations of freedom must be girded with a moral and spiritual revival. As free men humbly seek God and present their bodies, minds and hearts to their country and the cause of all mankind, we may well believe that the tyranny shall not triumph, and freedom shall not perish from the earth. You can trust the communists, page 182. Are there not still some Americans who get a lump in their throats when they hear the Star-Spangled Banner, and who thank the merciful Lord for the privilege of being born American citizens? I am tired and weary of beatniks who say they have a right to determine what laws of the land they are willing to obey. I am tired and fed up with the segment of society in which it is difficult to distinguish a male from a female, and who claim they represent the new wave of America, and who sneer at the old-fashioned virtues of honesty, integrity, and morality on which America grew to greatness. I am tired and getting madder by the day of the filth peddlers who have launched Americans in an obscenity race. I am tired of bearded bums who tramp the picket lines, and sit-ins that denounce the United States and the principles of Christian democracy. There is still some room in Africa, Cuba, Russia, and communist China for those who have sought on every hand to abolish our sacred trust in God. I am tired of those who think capitalism is a dirty word, and who think free enterprise and private initiative are symbols of greed. Picture with caption that says, "Unbelievable but true." A moratorium crowd approaches the Washington Monument, November 15, 1969, carrying Viet Cong flags. Washington officials allowed these Viet Cong flags to fly freely during this moratorium. Human Events U. June 3, 1961. I didn't want to die. Walking across the rice paddies of Vietnam toward a mountain range, the young American soldier commented to a buddy, "How quiet and deserted it is, nor even the birds are singing." Suddenly the fire from automatic rifles seemed to come from every bush. The young man tried to save the life of his buddy by grabbing him and pulling him into the bushes to safety. He never saw the rifle the enemy fired at him point blank from a few paces away. A month after the youngster's death, one of the buddies found a letter under his bunk, a letter written while he was still alive, in which he anticipated his death. His commanding officer mailed it to the soldier's parents in Graham, North Carolina. What follows is the text of that letter, which this year received the Freedom's Foundation's highest honor as PFC. Hiram D. Strickland's father and mother read it for the first time, some 30 days after he was buried. Dear folks, I'm writing this letter as my last one. You've probably already received word that I'm dead, and that the government wishes to express its deepest regret. Believe me, I didn't want to die, but I know it was part of my job. I want my country to live for billions and billions of years to come. I want it to stand as a light to all people oppressed, and guide them to the same freedom we know. If we can stand and fight for freedom, then I think we have done the job God set down for us. It's up to every American to fight for the freedom we hold so dear. If we don't, the smells of freedom air could become dark and damp as in a prison cell. We won't be able to look at ourselves in a mirror, much less at our sons and daughters, because we know we have failed our God, our country, and our future generations. I can hold my head high because I fought, whether it be in heaven or hell. Besides, the saying goes, one more GI from Vietnam, St. Peter, I've served my time in hell. I fought for Sandy, Nell, Gail, Mom, and Dad. But when the twins and Sandy's kids get old enough, they'll probably have to fight too. Tell them to go proudly and without fear of death, because it is worth keeping the land free. I remember a story from Mr. Williams' English classes when I was a freshman that said, "The cowards die 1,000 times, the brave die but once." Don't mourn me, Mother, for I'm happy I died fighting my country's enemies, and I will live forever in people's minds. I've done what I've always dreamed of. Don't mourn me, for I died a soldier of the United States of America. God bless you all and take care. I'll be seeing you in heaven. Your loving son and brother, Butch. Where is that country we used to know? In the America of yesterday, you paid your debts as quickly as possible and went without things to do it. You disciplined your children but disciplined yourself first. You spent less than you earned and demanded your government do the same. You went to church, your children to Sunday school, you held daily prayers, and no court would have dared to interpose any law into your private religions. You would have been horrified at, and quick to change, men in high places who made deals. You expected to prosper only by doing a better and better job. You obeyed the law but took active enough part in government to see that the laws were just. You walked softly but carried a big stick. And that was the character which brought this country victory in 3 wars in your lifetime, built it back from a shattering depression, and fed and saved the civilized world. Is there enough of it left to do it again? A time to stand. There comes a time in everyone's life when your conscience can tolerate no more compromise, when for your self-respect, but chiefly that of your children, you have to risk their safety and yours, their future, you'd gladly waive yours, to do what you know in your heart is right, and no longer hesitate because of any consequence. Every father and mother has had that agonizing choice, and every nation that survived. Read history. The ones who chose safety got slavery. The ones who chose self-respect got, often after pain, peace with honor. We believe this country must make such a choice now. The screams for compromise, for pooling our future for safety, peace at any price, are not, we solemnly believe, the voice of America. The real Americans who built this country, whose taxes pay its bills, who do the fighting for it, the screamers would not, are anxious but not afraid. This is a time to stand, and we believe these true Americans are saying this is the time. No heroics but no cringing either. What is right for America? And then when America is safe again, trust American charity to do what it can for the rest of the world. March 14, 1966. Have you ever wished that you could venture away to some little island away from all the daily struggles? How about some little isle in the Pacific away from the reaches of salesmen, telephones, doorbells? Have you thought about the grandeur of such a place where there are no grocery bills, rent, taxes or car payments? Doesn't this sound like a paradise? Plenty of food and water, no worries about checkbook balances or retirement. There is just such an island and many Americans have been there. It only costs one thing to get their freedom. The name of the island is Alcatraz. We need not be so gullible over the false theories of socialist revolutionaries as to purchase them with the price of freedom. A society built on social security, welfare, total protection and socialism could be nothing more than a prison, because it has no freedom. A prison has perfect security, and that is the only virtue of socialism. America has always been willing to help other nations to become free and independent. However, we have been overextending and misappropriating materials and money for many years. America has virtually saved the Soviet Union several times, and we are still giving them aid and wealth. Communist prophecy. They, the Americans, will furnish credits which will serve as a means to support the communist parties, and by supplying us with materials and techniques which are not available to us, they will build our war industry, which is essential to our future attacks on our suppliers. In other words, they will be laboring to prepare their own suicides. 1. Lenin. Our government has become top-heavy, inefficient, and excessively expensive. It was not intended to become that way, said Thomas Jefferson. The way to have good and safe government is not to trust it all to one, but to divide it among the many, distributing to every one exactly the functions he is competent to. What has destroyed liberty and the rights of man in every government which has existed under the sun? The generalizing and concentrating all cares and powers into one body, no matter whether of the autocrats of Russia or France, or the aristocrats of a Venetian Senate. Our country is too large to have all its affairs directed by a single government. Public servants at such a distance, and from under the eye of their constituents, must, from the circumstance of distance, be unable to administer and overlook all the details necessary for the good government of the citizens, and the same circumstance, by rendering detection impossible to their constituents, will invite the public agents to corruption, plunder, and waste. And I do verily believe that if the principle were to prevail of a common law being in force in the United States, it would be the most corrupt government on the earth. What an augmentation of the field for jobbing, speculating, plundering, office building and office hunting would be produced by an assumption of all the state powers into the hands of the general government. The true theory of our Constitution is surely the wisest and best, that the states are independent as to everything within themselves, and united as to everything respecting foreign nations. When all government, domestic and foreign, in little as in great things, shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided of one government on another, and will become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. The Wisdom of Thomas Jefferson. By Edward Boykin, pages 28, 30, 32, 33. There are dangerous steps along the path from freedom to slavery. Checks and balances were meant to keep our government in the form of a republic. However, it too can be subverted and thereby become venal and oppressive, causing the seeds of revolution to again be sown in its citizens. 1. The people go from chains to spiritual faith. 2. From spiritual faith to courage. 3. From courage to liberty. 4. From liberty to abundance. 5. From abundance to selfishness. 6. From selfishness to complacency. 7. From complacency to apathy. 8. From apathy to dependency. 9. From dependency back again to bondage. How far along the way is America? It's not too late to stop the clock. An excellent example of comparative fruits of the capitalist and communist concepts is portrayed in the nation of Germany. This nation, split in two, lives under the ideologies of both systems. After World War II, the Soviet army built the Iron Curtain across the German nation, splitting east from west. East Germany was plundered and stripped of its industry and wealth. 17 million people in the German East Zone can testify to the wonderful blessings of the Soviet Socialist Republic. Today, after 20 years of communist influence, one of their citizens is fortunate to be able to purchase more than 2 pounds of potatoes at a time. Eggs, cheese, milk, and even a small soup bone are difficult to obtain. East Germany is scarcely able to survive with the poverty and starvation that has stricken them through the Soviet socialist system. West Germany has developed from the debris of war to the strongest economic nation in all of Europe. Another illustration of capitalism and communism was well described by an anonymous author. Two memorials, two ways of life. For the first time in history, the entire globe has become one community, but it is a community in which two opposing ways of life are competing, both struggling to win the allegiance of the mind and heart of mankind. Sometime in the course of the 1970s, the issue will be decided. There are many ways of contrasting these competing systems. Over the years, I've often found myself thinking of them in terms of two men, Lenin and Lincoln. It seems to me that Lenin's tomb in Moscow and the Lincoln Memorial in Washington are symbolic of the men and of the ways of life they represent. The Lincoln Memorial is a beautiful, gleaming white. Lenin's is a hard, highly polished, metallic black. Visiting the Lincoln Memorial, you go up the steps into the white light of day. Visiting the Lenin Mausoleum, you trudge along a narrow hallway, the walls 15 of which are dark, deep red. Eventually you turn, go down steps, turn and go down more steps. Finally you are some 30 feet beneath the earth in a small, eerily lighted vault, shuffling around a rectangular pit of blackness, out of which emerges a black stone shaft, atop of which there is a thick, black marble slab. On the slab, bedded on a luxurious red silk cushion, there lies the body of a man, Lenin. Over the lower part of his body a red flag has been thrown. Just below his crossed hands, there is a golden object gleaming in the dim, blue light that comes from overhead, the cross, sickle and hammer. At the Lincoln Memorial, you raise your eyes and look up. To view a tight-lipped, waxen Lenin, you look down. In one, you are closed in as in a dungeon. In the other, you seem to be a part of God's great out-of-doors. In one, though you are looking at what remains of the actual, physical body of a man, it is unquestionably something dead and artificial. In the other, though it is chiseled marble, warmth and life somehow breathe through it. You look up to a tall, gaunt man with a kindly face, whose brooding eyes are turned toward the gleaming dome of the capital of the nation he held together. What a contrast in the character and the meaning of these two men. Lenin once declared, "It's a fight to the end, to their complete annihilation." He was referring to our annihilation, to the annihilation of all peoples, and the destruction of all institutions, not specifically and completely communist-dominated. Lincoln said, "With malice toward none, with charity for all." Lenin devoted his entire life setting one class against another. Lincoln said, "You cannot help the poor by destroying the rich. You cannot help the wage earner by pulling down the wage payer." Lenin said, "Nothing is right or wrong, false or true, good or bad, except as it furthers the revolution." Lincoln said, "With firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right." Lenin said, "One would like to caress the masses, but one doesn't dare. Like dogs, they turn and bite." Lincoln said, "God must have loved the common people, he made so many of them." How often we sing our national anthem, but fail to read the meaning of the words. So too, we often enjoy the harvests of American freedom, but seldom understand the reasons we have them. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet, whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat. Across the wilderness, America, America, God mend thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved, in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness and every gain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream, that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. A true love story. I was reading a history book in the 7th grade when I first noticed her. and I suddenly felt a bit of childish passion. By the time I graduated from high school, I had fallen in love. She may be a little on the large size, but who cares? To me, she's the most beautiful thing on earth. I love her for many reasons, and one of them is her compassion for others. She's always thinking of someone else, always giving of herself. When I stop to think of the numerous people she has helped when they need her, I can't find the words to express myself. No, she's not perfect by any means, but then, who is? All I care is that she tries hard to be just what I want her to be. How many others can say that? Not many. I know. I've been around. She's gentle and kind and gives with her heart. And when I see anyone trying to take advantage of her, it makes my blood boil. I guess I'm just jealous. Haven't I the right to be? I'd never stand by and see anyone try to take her away from me. She's too precious. Besides, she depends on me too much. I'll go on loving and protecting her to the day I die. Of course, there are times when I tell her of things that are wrong, but after I've told her, she always does her best to change them for me. I'm proud of her for that. I've only to let her know how I feel and be a little patient. No one can change things in a day, can they? It's when I've been away for a while that I really miss her and realize how much I long to get back. What's that saying? Absence makes the heart grow fonder? As I near home, she's waiting there with outstretched arms to offer me all of the wonderful things I have never been able to find in this cockeyed world. I know. I've been around. Everywhere I've traveled, I've made the comparison, and could not find one who could compare. I never have, I never will. I'm convinced after all these years. When I go to sleep each night, I rest peacefully, knowing that she is there, belonging to me. And in my heart, I'll always keep her precious name, America. There's not another beauty like her in all of God's world. I know. I've been around. AFPS. America has grown quickly from infancy to a gentle giant. America has stood above all other nations in glory, power, and respect, yet always a friend to every other nation. America has recently been sleeping like Samson, while traitors like Delilah have sought to betray the secrets of his strength and to conspire with the enemy. Previously, like Delilah, who cried, "The Philistines are upon you," we as Americans have met the enemy and destroyed their attacks and conspiracies. However, we are now living when the last call of "the enemy is upon you" is heard. The secrets of our strength are in the hands of our enemies. Traitors walk among us as our own flesh and blood, and our strength has been gradually diminishing. We, like Samson, are sleeping. Shall we remain reposed until the enemy is upon us? Or shall we awaken to the conspiracies, the strength of the enemy, and the plight of our condition? It is time to make haste and fortify ourselves for the inevitable clash of the coming American Revolution.